Good morning. Good morning. We'll go ahead and get going. And it is our last day. It's our last day. We made it. Your tongue is tamed. You know all the things. That's it. You'll never have any problems with sinful speech ever again because you know all the things now. Congratulations. You've made it. Would that to be true, right? Our discussion this morning, our last section, and we'll hopefully spend a little time reviewing, is we will cover ill-spoken words and fitly spoken words. And so we'll try to give consideration to those two topics as we round out this study of the tongue in Proverbs. And our verse is really one we've been kind of driving at the whole time we've been discussing. And that is Proverbs 25:11. Read it with me. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. All right, good one to memorize and to be on your tongue. Because here again, as we've heard week in, week out, that one of the main kind of charges of Proverbs is that we would restrain our tongue, that we would hold back our tongue. Indeed, we need to be very mindful about what comes out of our mouth, and yet the call is not to vows of silence, right? The call is not to say nothing at no time to anyone. It's to speak wise words, well-fit words, fitly spoken words, as the verse would say here. And so again, our topic for the day is ill-spoken words and fitly spoken words. Now, I have a sheet on my computer that you can't see, but I need a volunteer to give me a letter and a number, and the number has to be under 34. So can I have a letter and a number? Anybody? L? That's too high. I got L. I'll give you L5. How about that? All right. Corrective criticism at a funeral. What? Give me another letter and a number. N2. It's like we're playing bingo. Comedy and joking at a graduation. What was the other one? P7. Whispered secrets in a courtroom. It's like we're making a comic book or something here. Somebody give me something else. Letter and a number. A33. Blessing during military honors. Doesn't sound too bad. Y14. Political ranting during a police interview. This is great. This is fun. Come on. Keep them coming. Give me some letters. B2. Bingo. Soothing words at a graduation. Z. Negotiation tactics. 5 at a funeral. All right. So what do I have here? I have kinds of speech and I have very disparate circumstances of life, right? So you might use F, technical jargon. 6, during children's story time. What is this list? What is it doing? These are ill-spoken words, right? When you mix up the setting and the speech. When these kinds of things don't fit the location in which they're being said, it makes me think about one of the verses that was really kind of the genesis of this category in my mind as I was reading Proverbs, which is Proverbs 27, verse 14. Have somebody read that for us. 27, verse 14.
Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing.
Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. What in the world is that verse about? The woes of morning people. Why the Bible says morning people are bad people. No, that's a, yeah. Okay, the woes of morning people. What else? Don't be loud when people are trying to sleep. Thank you. Yes. Now, what is being said? A blessing, right? A blessing. This is great. These are good, nice things. We want to bless. Bless others and do not curse and bless. Right? We want to speak well of each other and to each other. So this is a blessing. But what is wrong with it? Timing. Timing. Some of the commentators would say that maybe there's a sense of kind of the early bird gets the worm here, where this person is seeking to make sure they're the first one at the door to bless the person of prestige or power, right? I'm going to make sure everybody knows that I think this person's great. So I'm going to get up early in the morning and I'm going to shout from the rooftops. And yet what's missing, at least in some sense, is timing, right? I mean, he says, buongiorno, right? You know, he's all happy. What's this guy do? He's just trying to sleep, okay? He's trying to take a little nappy nap, and he keeps getting woken up by this guy cursing. Blessing. So what kind of ill-timed speech is in view here? Well, it's just the wrong words at the wrong time. So we've talked about a lot of different components of speech. We've talked about what kinds of words we use. We've talked about how they're portrayed. We've talked about whether or not something should be said. And this, I think, session gives us the most focus on when. When. What is the setting into which these words are being spoken? And so I gave you my little game here, my little list. I mean, you know, theological debate at a birthday party. Something that doesn't line up there, okay? You know, condolences on a first date, right? These are combinations of words that just don't seem to match the actual circumstance. And in such, maybe like Proverbs 27:14, not only are they, you know, misreceived, but they're mal-received. They're negatively received. Okay? So help me think about that a little bit as I gave my goofy list. But when are you perhaps likely to seek to even say something well that gets received as a curse rather than a blessing? Okay. Okay, so there's a correction that's needed. I mean, there's some real wrong being done. There's correction needed. And yet, your correction is not likely to be received well in the midst of that. Yeah, that's right. What else? Okay, so maybe you pile on when somebody's having they had a rough meeting or they had a hard time. Okay, good.
Maybe a bad car accident and tell they should park there.
You've just highlighted my favorite internet sensation, which is you come upon a car wreck or somebody's car dangling off a cliff. Can't park there, mate. You know, and I mean, yeah, that's right. Just jesting at tragedy, perhaps, right? We could do that. Yeah. So we could be timed, you know, here again, mistimed. And so I would say, how is it that we speak ill-timed words? Well, let me give you one way in light of Proverbs 27 is that we mismatch the situation with our words, right? Due either to a lack of awareness or perhaps what's more common, a lack of consideration of the feelings and you know, troubles of the other person. We speak in ways that hurt rather than harm because of the timing of what was said. It's not just, you know, again, I'm kind of taking what some of the commentators are saying about the trying to get one up. I'm kind of taking that out of my interpretation of 27 and saying it's just really the timing. Even if the heart's right, the timing is wrong, and so it causes harm. Let's look at some other ways. Proverbs 12:16. Can I just have a reader? 12:16. Just say yeah. Yeah. 20:22. 26:18 to 19. All right. 12:16.
The vexation of a fool is known at once, but the prudent ignores an insult.
All right. Vexation is known at once, prudent ignores an insult. 20:22. Somebody's reading.
Not say, I will repay evil, wait for the Lord, and he will deliver you.
All right. So Proverbs 20:22 relates really well to Romans 12:21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So Proverbs 20, verse 22, it says, do not say, I will repay evil, wait for the Lord. So where is way two here? Way two is responding in a poorly timed manner by responding immediately to insult. So if you are offended, if you are hurt, if you are sinned against, or perhaps even if you just see sin in the world, the immediate response is often ill-timed. It is often not the right thing to say and not the right time to say it. 26:18-19.
Like a madman who throws firebrands and arrows to his death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking.
All right. Pretty interesting, the things you find in Proverbs, isn't it? The man who deceives his neighbor and says, I am only joking. It's a pretty serious thing to deceive your neighbor, right? I don't know what exactly is prompting me to think about this, but I've thought about the whole idea of a trust-based society, right? You know, the different things that we can do and not do because we trust others. We all have some measure of trust as we drive on the interstate, and yet, as I was raised, and maybe you were raised, the only safe way to drive on the interstate is to assume everyone else is trying to kill you, right? That's it. I mean, and if that's not true in Atlanta, I don't know where it's true. So, yeah, we have a measure of trust. Well, what's happening here is somebody abusing that trust and then kind of backing down for the sake of making a joke and saying, oh, I was just messing around. Well, you know, you're causing a lot of trouble in the midst of this. So we were mentioning the joke of you can't park there. I would say one way that we can speak ill-timed words is jesting in the midst of seriousness. We can, I don't know, guys, I don't know if this has ever happened to you. We can wound severely by making a joke in the midst of something. I'll just tell you an honest story from my life. I was getting to know a friend. We'd hung out a few times. He was in the midst of divorce and custody battle and all this kind of stuff. And he sent me kind of a recent summary of what had happened where his now ex-wife had done some things. And my response was to send him the meme from The Lion King where Scar says, oh, the drama, and kind of throws himself on the thing. I meant that as a supportive friend to say, you know, man, here she goes again with the drama. He immediately took that to mean me telling him that all he was drama. I wish I could say we kind of sorted it out, but we kind of didn't. It really, really offended this guy, and it wrecked what little of a friendship we had. I'm just pointing at this one because I love to laugh. I love to make jokes of things. There are friends of mine that I can joke about pretty serious things. I think everybody that is engaged in, intentional ministry finds ways to handle what we deal with. And sometimes it's just kind of joking about it, having a little levity to it. But an ill-timed joke can cause severe damage if we're not careful, right? And so being mindful of that. It's not maybe as innocent often as it seems. So ill-timed words, way 3, jesting in the midst of seriousness. Let's see just one more kind of round here. Proverbs 25:14-15, I'll read. It says, like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. With patience, just stick 14. Like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. And then Proverbs 20:25 says, it is a snare to say rashly, it is holy, and to reflect only after making vows. What's another way, in light of these verses, that we could speak ill-timed words? Yeah, rushing in. Yeah, both of these have the sense of a promise being made. One, 25:14 is to someone else, right? They boast of a gift they don't give. And 20:25 is to call something holy, to make a vow to God that you're going to fulfill something and not actually intending to follow through with it. Maybe you only realize what you've committed to after the fact. So way 4 I've written out is just rash promises with no intention of following through. Rashness, right? What's in view there is the speed at which the thing is spoken and the fact that it then goes unfulfilled. Last one here is Proverbs 26, verses 4 through 5. Could I have someone read verse 4?
Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like yourself.
All right, very good. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like yourself. Somebody paraphrase that for me. What is that verse getting at? Okay, say it again. Don't agree with what he's saying. Okay. Don't sink to their level, because what will happen? You'll end up being like them, right? So don't go along with them. Don't answer them according to their folly. So should we talk to fools? It says answer not. Let's read verse 5. Somebody read it when you get there. I'll read. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Y'all, I know you're really good Bible students. What kind of phrase is the first one? Is verse 4. It's a command, right? It's a command. This is how you must speak. Don't answer a fool according to his folly. What kind of phrase is verse 5? It's also a command. You must answer a fool according to his folly. Now, what just happened? Did the Bible just break open in front of us? Is Proverbs 26, 4 and 5 the reason we've now thrown out inspiration? This is just the words of man. God has nothing to do with this because it's fallen. What do we do with this? Apparently, you're supposed to answer and not answer a fool. Okay? Timing. Yeah. Case by case wisdom, right? In almost like a little mini test of Proverbs here, it's saying that to parse out whether or not you should answer this particular fool, you need wisdom. You need a right understanding. Go ahead.
Don't answer in kind.
Mm-hmm.
Answer with words.
That's right.
Because the word is truth, and we answer with truth, and it will stand against anything. So instead of acting angrily or frustrated, whatever, act in love and kindness.
That's great. Yep. That's right. So our call from this passage is not to answer in kind. In other words, don't answer in such a way that you become like that fool. And yet, a fool who goes uncorrected will grow only more foolish, right? They'll become hardened in their foolishness. If you remember back to foolish speech, there was that fool that thought he was wiser than 7 men. Well, the fool might not accept your correction anyway, but they're still called to be corrected. The call for us to correct them. So what are we saying? Well, one way to mistime your words would be to fail to let wisdom diagnose the listener. What kind of person is this that I'm speaking to? How are they going to receive it? Now, I'm not prophetic, but I'm seeing with wisdom how they're responding to this conversation. Do they have any interest in correction? Do they have any interest in being challenged? Is this kind of that moment where I need to step up and say a hard thing, even if they're going to not want to receive it super well? But also diagnosing yourself in the midst of it. Can I engage in this conversation without slipping into the same kind of sinfulness that the person I'm speaking to is? So they're shouting, they're ranting, they're raving, and the only thing you can come up with is to meet their shouting with shouting, then you need not to speak. That would be you becoming like them yourself. But they're, aggressive. They have a position. They want to get it out there to the world. You have a measured, logical, biblical response to correct what they're saying. Bring it. Because otherwise they walk away further convinced. So again, ill-timed words would be getting that backwards. And only speaking when you jump in and have the conversation the way they are and not speaking in a way that honors the Lord. All right. So a lot of different kind of components. I gave 5, just different ways to think about getting this wrong. Other passages that maybe come to mind Like Matthew 12:36, we will give an account for every careless word. That's become a staple verse for us in this. Speaking words that fit the occasion. Ephesians 5, verse 4. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. And we want words that fit the occasion. Ephesians 4, that give grace to those who hear. So Ephesians 5:4 and 4:29. I want to speak well-spoken words, not ill-spoken words. So let's talk about putting off some of these things. I've tried to kind of build out this definition as we've gone. It's a mismatch of the setting to the listener. Sometimes there's a speed component, so it's how quickly you respond in light of being offended, or perhaps how quickly you speak out a vow, something like that. And then it's lacking wisdom. It's failing to understand what is going on in the situation, whether it's in yourself or in the person you're speaking to. And so all of those things might show up as we are considering ill-spoken words. Give me some practical examples. When might you be prone to, let's just call it what we call it, put your foot in your mouth in this way? When you're parenting. Good. Just all the time when you're parenting. Yes. When else? Jumping to conclusions. Yeah, for sure. So there's a haste in that. There's I gotta get the next word in. Okay. When else?
You're being held accountable.
When you're being held accountable. Tell me about that.
You're having somebody come to you and calling out sin in your life.
Okay.
Make all your excuses.
Okay. So you're being corrected. You're on the receiving end of correction, and you got all the things to say at that point. Okay. Yeah.
When you're around people that are more familiar to you,
Okay.
or close family, at the end of the day, you just want to.
Yeah. Yeah. So lower reserves. You're around people that you're more familiar with, so you're more willing to say all the things. Okay. Yeah, Jay Adams has a little booklet about what to do when anger gets the upper hand. It's a little trifold, kind of one sheet thing. And he talks about a mom who says she can't control her anger, and she just goes off on her kids. Well, and then he gives the story of, the mom's sitting there just railing on the kids and yelling. And all of a sudden, Susie Q calls on the phone and ring, ring, ring. And she picks up the phone and says, "Oh, hi, Susie. How's it going?" "It's going great. Good to hear you. Good to talk to you." Well, apparently she can control her anger, because when Susie calls, she's ready to go to put on and show, a kind, sweet voice. But in that moment, she doesn't want to. What else? Ill-timed words. Where else might we see that?
To your point about levity, in law enforcement, there's a thing called blue humor. And it's basically what you described. In order to deal with the things that you see, with murder, suicide, all those different things,
Yep.
amongst yourselves, you banter.
Yep.
And there have been occasions where you didn't realize a family member overheard, and it can come across as cruel and callous, but that's not the way you're intending it.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to be careful of your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. So you found yourself inside of a group, perhaps, where humor is kind of a normal way of dealing with hard things, whether it's law enforcement or military or doctors or whatever. And as that humor escapes that group, or even, you don't realize it's become so much of your vocabulary that you let one fly in the midst of another group and realize, oh, wow, this is not the setting for this. This is not it. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I think even in that example, a lot of this just becomes habit for us, right? I mean, you think about the people you surround yourself with, and save intentional effort and God's grace on your part, you're going to end up talking like your friends, right? You have similar phrases. You have similar ways of discussing things and handling things. So it's something to consider, even who we surround ourselves with. All right, so if this is a concern, what kinds of heart motivations or false beliefs might prompt this kind of speech? What might be simmering down there in the heart that's bubbling out and boiling over through this kind of speech? Mm-hmm. Okay, so pride that assumes we're right, or pride that offloads our guilt onto somebody else. You know, yeah, I flew off the handle, but you did this, 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 and this. You made me angry. Okay. Not being slow to anger. All right. Fearful. Yep. Okay. A perceived control. So I want to keep control of the situation. Yeah. I wonder if it's sometimes just and I guess it's pride when it comes down to it, but just a lack of care and concern for others, or a lack of severity of understanding of our words. You know, what I say matters, not because I'm important, but because words are important. And so not caring about that is going to lead me to say some of these things in these ways. And it probably shows more than anything, I just don't believe that. Like, I don't believe words matter if I'm just throwing them out at all these weird times. Maybe a lack of desire to honor God with our words, or a lack of awareness that God is, is watching, and so we just let fly. This one's kind of interesting in the second round of questions, because often, we're talking about lying or flattering or whatever. There's some real tangible get. There's something that you can kind of, you're going to achieve if you sin in this way. And I mean that in a negative sense, you're going to achieve it. But what promises does this sin make? Like this seems kind of like our foolish speech that we talked about a few weeks ago, where part of it is there's not a promise. There's kind of oh yeah, whoops, I definitely, like like you're saying, the jokes that make their way out of the circle. It's not that you were thinking about it, it's that you were unthinking. And that's kind of the crux of this, is that there is a failure to recognize what's going on, not an intentional pursuit of saying that wrong thing. And so I don't know. Does anybody have a different thought on that as far as the promises or the consequences seeking to avoid? Like, what is speaking in this way offering you? Attention? Yeah, it's fair. Kind of bust in the room and say something loud and proud, and everybody's got to stop and listen. That's fair. Yeah.
With the blue humor, I think it's a relief
Mm-hmm.
from the reality of what you're feeling.
Yeah. So there's a relief. Okay. Yeah, maybe an image kind of thing. Like I just want to be seen as having an edge. If we're talking the humor thing, I want to be seen as kind of I'm floating above this and I'm fine, so I can joke about it. I could see that.
Perception of the mind that it's okay to do what you want in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So in an expressive world, right, where we're told that, everything we feel and think should be expressed, it's kind of a venting. It's a letting, this is just me, and I don't care if it fits the moment or not. I'm going to say it because I want to say it. Yeah. I'll feel good because I've let it out, right? I've gotten it out. I don't care that it didn't fit the moment. I needed to say it right now. Right?
Sometimes you do it with the intent of you want to show the other person you're right.
Okay.
They're wrong. And sometimes it goes too far.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want that position of rightness. And I think if we're thinking kind of the more malicious side of it, ill-timed could be inopportune for the person hearing it. So this would be, I've made the point about trying to get out the door to get to church on time. This would be like we're walking from the house to the car, and I pull one of my kids aside and just absolutely lay into them about being late getting ready, well, what opportunity do they have to respond to that? None. I mean, we're literally getting in the car, come here. That's it. You're toast. I win. I've said the thing. Now, is that the right time and manner to correct somebody for being late? No. They can't really receive that correction. They can't do anything about it at that point. And so I'm just kind of putting them in a bad position. That may be the most malicious kind of version I can think of it is I'm going to intentionally have a conversation out of time so that I can get my point across and we can get out. And I don't have to hear anything. I don't have to be corrected. I don't have to whatever. What kind of damage can it have? What kind of damage can this have on perhaps your relationship? Yeah.
It hurts the relationship because the person delivering the jab or whatever has no feeling or concern of the friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lack of concern for the person on the other side is gonna hurt the relationship. People get that. They get that they're not being cared for or considered. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Yeah. Can be a real temptation to them to be angry, bitter. Yeah, because they keep hearing these things out of place, right? Out of time. Thinking back to our first example with the blessing early in the morning will be perceived as cursing, this becomes a person you don't really want to hear from anymore. Even if they're saying nice things. Like, y'all, again, we talked about flattery a couple weeks ago. I know. This is the best Sunday school you've ever been a part of. Okay, I get it. But if you keep texting me that at 4 a.m, I'm going to block your number. Like, don't come knock on my door at midnight tonight and just remind me how great of a Sunday school teacher I am. No, leave me alone. I want to sleep. You're going to eventually not want to hear from this person, or people are going to basically shudder when you speak. And now there I'm talking about maybe kind of the more innocent sounding, the more like a kid blurting out something in the midst of, another situation. But maybe these even more malicious-y kind of things, you're going to find yourself cut off. I don't want to hear from you. And even if you're saying something good, I'm perceiving it as a curse. I'm not perceiving it as something helpful or good or wise. It gives us, I'll give you another funny one. And this was borderline silly. But I had a pastor in the past, church ago, who pulled me aside one day and said, "Can you talk to your wife for me?" I said, What's going on? She asked me how I was doing right before I walked up to preach. I was like looking around, I was looking for the candid camera thing, like I was on a TV show. I was like, "Tell me about that." I was like, "Yeah, it was 2 minutes before service, and she came up and told me good morning, Pastor, and asked how I was doing. Now, how does that help me get ready to preach?" And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know which category to put this in. What category do you put that in? What do you do with that report? Was she doing something wrong for wanting to just let her pastor know she cared about him and, how he was doing? I almost wonder if it was like she didn't say, "Oh, hey, Pastor, how you doing?" But, "Hey, Pastor, how are you doing?" Isn't that funny? How you immediately got the difference between the two things I was saying, right? One is the church, how you doing? And what's the right answer? Fine, thank you. You're all fine. Everybody's always fine. The other one sounded like we could be here a minute. But I just thought that was funny. It's like, man, if that's the worst thing she did this week, she's doing pretty good. She cared about the guy who's supposed to shepherd her soul. That's interesting. Okay, anyway. So, I don't know, maybe next time he sees her coming, he's like, "Not this lady. She wants in my business when I'm trying to walk up on the stage and preach." I don't know. So again, what can it do? Well, it can make you be misperceived. And again, if you go back to 27:14, I'm giving this guy more credit than some of the commentators did, and I'm saying this is more innocent. It's more intentional, kindness, and it's being perceived poorly. And so even your better intentions can be misinterpreted. I think it's a call to us to consider, even as we're speaking kindly, to just be wise about when and how. Of course, this can have, reputation type impacts. How about your work? Ill-timed words at work. These days it'll cost you your job. Yeah. An off-color joke is simple anyway, but in the wrong setting, you're gone. Okay, what else?
I've thought a lot about the lack of a better term, dark humor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you use that in certain lines of work or whatever excuse we use it for. I've had people that's come to me afterwards like, oh, that years later, this is something that really weighed heavy on me, and I was having a hard time dealing with it. And I was like, well, I was too, but that it took years for that to come back around.
Yeah. So that kind of humor could, even if it's the dealing with the humor, could be perceived as callousness, or I wouldn't go to him with a real problem because the last thing I saw him deal with, he just joked about it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, here again, maybe some of the sillier examples, if you are sitting in the middle of a staff meeting, you got 10 people around a conference table, and you jump up and say, I love baseball. It's like, well, this person might be insane. We might have a different real problem here to deal with, right? So you could have kind of more of those innocent sounding kind of ways, but what are those doing? They're kind of eroding trust, right? This is not a person I can trust. Or just, again, misreading the moment. Your boss has come in and the reports have come back and the branch is down and whatever, and, all you want to talk about is this week's football game. And it's like, dude, you don't get it. We're in trouble. Like, we've got to solve this issue that I'm bringing up right now, and in this moment, it seems like you don't care. And so you really kind of put yourself out there in the world. So just different things to think about. And, here again, your walk with the Lord, maybe to really stretch our category a little bit here, what about just misunderstanding what God has for you in that moment and speaking wrongly to it? We're not rejoicing with those who rejoice. We're not weeping with those who weep. We're speaking in ways that are out of sync with where we are and how God would have us to be in that moment. You've just been reading scripture and you've read something that brought great conviction, and your response is just to kind of joke it off and try to move on, when God's actually at work in you to try to draw you to himself, try to call you out from your sin, and you paper it over. Thinking about where the shepherds of Israel, would say, peace, peace, when there is no peace. Well, that's the wrong thing to say right now. This is not that. All right, let's press on here and make sure we spend some time on the put on. And so for putting on, we're back to Proverbs 25:11. So we've talked about trying to put off. We're trying to be mindful of these ill-spoken words. So we're thinking about timing and setting and manner and who are we speaking to. Now let's think about how that fits over into putting these things on. What are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. One of the commentators says, we must consider the time and the person no less than the truth. We may think to relieve our conscience by speaking our mind, but to do it rudely and harshly may put a stumbling block in our brother's way. The apples of gold in their beautiful cover evidently imply good sense, good taste, with good things. So we're speaking in ways that are wise, that are fitly spoken. Again, back to Ephesians 4:29. Only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. That may give grace to those who hear. So how are we going to know? How are we going to put on this kind of speech? What are some marks that we might look for? And these might not be universally applicable, but what are some marks we want to look for before we speak to know that we're speaking into the right situation at the right time? Okay. How it's received. Okay, so reception can be an indicator. Yep. As you are saying things and you're reading the person that you're talking to, okay, and you can even ask, was that helpful? Is that clear? Is that helpful? Okay. Read the room. Interesting. It's funny to me, again, some of these passages, and I've loved this study. I've loved just seeing all these different facets that Proverbs has to say about speech. How many of them come back to wisdom? And they're kind of case wisdom. They're kind of, when I'm in a situation like that, this is what makes sense. I might not be able to read a book about that situation, but something about drawing on my experience and the wisdom that God gives sets me up to speak into that scenario well. Becky. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if they cannot receive or don't want to receive it, we actually feel the word of God tells us to be ready to receive it out. Whether they want to hear it or not,
Yeah.
let them know. That way, it can that seed can get planted. But if you don't plant it, it won't be planted.
Yeah, it's good. So it's interesting. Reception is important, right? And I think over time we're building a sense of how things will be received. And yet we have to say, especially in some of what we've studied in the past couple of weeks, that right words are not necessarily always received well. If that was the case, we wouldn't have persecution. I mean, people would preach the gospel and everybody would say great, and there wouldn't be any problems. But yeah, so it's not necessarily just that the reception tells us whether it was the right thing to say or not, but we can build on that. But we do have to speak. We have to speak faithfully.
Reading the room is kind of like that moment, but there's also knowing the person,
Mm-hmm.
which is more like what kind of personality or demeanor.
Yeah.
Is this person I can talk to you in a way that I can't talk to someone else?
Yeah. Which is interesting if you think about it. It almost gives me the sense that the deeper knowledge we have of a person, the higher our responsibility to speak truth to them. Right? I mean, there are guys in this room that I've spent hours upon hours with. There are guys in this room that I've spent 20 minutes with. It would seem to me that I have a stronger responsibility for the guys that I've spent time with, because just to Tony's point, I know them better. I know more of where their temptations are. I know more of what they hold dear and maybe what they're not as concerned about. That's kind of more of a stewardship than it is a passing, hey, how are you, fine kind of relationship where I don't know you. I don't know what you're up to. But where we have those connections, it's a deeper response. And so that means I, in some sense, have a much better shot at speaking fitly spoken words because I know more. I have a better kind of chance of speaking into that situation well. Let me give a couple more passages here. I'll just read them out. 13, let's see, I've got 13:3 in my note. What's going on here? Either I wrote some things wrong. Let me check. Let me read 16:21 because I do have that. The wise of heart is called discerning, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. 22, good sense is a fountain of life to him who has it, but the instruction of fools is folly. The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious and adds persuasiveness to his lips. Seems like those are all circling around the idea that how we speak has a major impact on how we're heard, right? I mean, if we are speaking these kinds of words in such a way that people can receive them well, then that is wisdom, and it actually says it increases persuasiveness. I have a mass comm undergrad and did a lot of study in advertising, and we had to actually take a media persuasiveness class. Like that was a semester of persuasiveness. What is an advertiser trying to do with persuasiveness? Sell you something. What'd you say? Yeah, sell this product, right? More things off the shelf. That's what I want. Get you to buy more stuff. Why would a wise man want persuasiveness?
Reinforce a lesson.
To reinforce a lesson. Interesting. Okay. What else?
You want the person you're talking to be wiser.
Okay. That the person hearing you would actually be prone to listen and receive it and become wiser because they've heard it, or to avoid danger because they've heard it. Right? I'm thinking about Proverbs 5 and 6 and 7, where the father is speaking to the son again and again, my son, take heed to my wisdom, right? And listen well and hear me. Why? To preserve your life. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to be captured by the forbidden one. So what do I want to be? I want to be persuasive. I want to be more persuasive than her with her golden tongue, with her smooth, oily words that capture you. I want you to listen to me and listen well. Well, it would seem like part of our persuasiveness is the fitness of our words. You know, are we speaking in a way that the people we're speaking to can actually hear these things? Proverbs 15:23 says, to make an apt answer is a joy to a man, and a word in season, how good is it? We want to give good answers, right answers. I had 15:14 on here. I don't know if that was misprint, but it makes sense. The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouths of fools feed on folly. Again, just thinking about that well-spoken word, well, it's going to seek understanding. It's going to seek knowledge. So how are we going to do these things? We're going to read the room. We're going to consider the actual knowledge we have. Remember, one of the things we said about fools and fools who speak voluminously is that they speak out of their lack rather than their fullness. So how am I going to speak a well-fit word where I'm going to understand the scenario? I'm going to understand the situation. I'll give you just a kind of common sense example here. If someone tells you they are seeking your wisdom on a subject about which you know nothing, A, you're not yet the right person to give them wisdom, and B, you can go look that up. Okay, I mean, just as a for example, we received a church email about someone perhaps being brought into the military. I didn't grow up my parents are both veterans, but that was way before I was born. I didn't grow up in a military family, didn't have any military friends, didn't live near a base, didn't have any connection to that world. If you came to talk to me about going to basic or not, I have next to no knowledge about that. And it would be unhelpful for me to just kind of assume, oh, going into basic is like being a pastor going to seminary. Let me just apply what I know about that into your situation. Now, could we talk about glorifying God and the good of others? Yeah, we can talk about all that stuff. But I either am not the right person or not the right person yet to give you kind of specific counsel on here's how you engage that situation. That's not my bag today. But could I pursue some wisdom? Could I find other godly men who've maybe gone through that or know a lot about that? Sure, I could. And either connect my friend to these other godly men or learn from them and bring them. Yeah, sure, I could. I'm going to pursue understanding. So I'm going to read the room. I'm going to pursue understanding, and I'm going to speak what is persuasive, helpful, and good for building up. Persuasive, helpful, good for building up. And does it fit the occasion? And again, reception, I think, is an important way to gauge whether it fits the moment. It's one of the things I've heard said before, and it's helpful and wise. When we think about witnessing to someone, we want to think about the gospel being an offense, not us being an offense, right? To hear from someone, Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, and that means you are one and you need saved, is offensive. Right? It offends the core of who we are, who thinks we're pretty good and we have done everything we need to earn God's favor. So that's offensive in and of itself. But how and when you say that doesn't have to be offensive. Let them stumble, if you will, over the gospel and not over your presentation. Let them stumble over that hard but loving truth you have to share with them and not the fact that you're a jerk because you said it in the middle of something else. And so we just consider that whole spread of things as we're trying to care for others. So if we're trying to contrast this with our past consideration of putting off ill-timed words, what heart or true belief has to be present for us to do this well? What has to be down here so that we can speak well in these specific situations? Compassion. Yeah, an earnest care for the person we're talking to. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a dependence on the Lord that prompts us to speak well for them, to build them up. Yeah. Nick? Yeah. Eat Chick-fil-A. Love God and love others, right? That's right. So we're guided by the two great commandments. The great commandment is to love God and love others. What's got to be down here? A love for God and love for others.
I think it's just believing that God's word has all the answers.
Mm.
You know, we don't have to pop off and express our opinion.
It's good. God's word has the answers. We don't have to just be the one to pop off. We don't have to have all the answers. That kind of sounds like humility to me. Right? Isn't that a right sizing of your role in this situation? Like, I'm not the end all be all. I'm not the only person you need to hear from. I may need to speak, and I may need to speak boldly, but I'm not everything here. There's other things that need to happen. In some of the forms of this that we're talking about, there's kind of an agenda check, right? What would be the purpose of me saying this now? And I think often, especially if we're thinking about conflicty kind of things, spouses, kids, work, whatever, often the agenda is, I'm going to say this now because I think it'll hurt the most now. I got them. And right here, right now, I'm going to let them have it. And that, contra compassion, right, that should indicate right off the bat that we are missing it. We're missing what we can and should be speaking there. So what's going to prompt that? A real motivation aimed at the good of those to whom we speak. How can I help? How can I bless? What could I say now that would be useful, helpful, beneficial for the other? And I'll just point out the bottom question here. When is it particularly hard to speak in this area? I don't think I'm alone in saying when I've been offended. Is that fair? Is it just me? It's just me? Okay. Well, that's offensive, so shame on you. Right? I mean, when you've been hurt. Talk about traffic. Do you ever get cut off and you go home 30 minutes later and say, I think that guy pulled over a little too fast in front of me? No. What do? What did you used to do before you got all sanctified? Learn to drive, and you go nuts, right? That's not the kind of thing we take time with. You don't go home and you're sitting up at night. You know what? That was not the most thoughtful way to operate a motor vehicle. I might write a letter. No, you just fire off. Quick to anger. So we need to be mindful of those temptations. All right, so want to just give us a minute to wrap up, and I thought it'd be helpful just to go back through and see what we've talked about over the time. So here were our 7 pairings. We've taken 13 weeks now to make it through. Deceitful words and truthful words. Foolish words and wise words. Destructive words and constructive words. Manipulative and sincere. Peace-breaking and peacemaking. Excessive and measured. Ill-spoken and now fitly spoken. And so I just hope this has been helpful for you. I think James was right. I mean, we've been at it for 3 months now. Did anybody solve it? Like, did you get it? You're good? No? I mean, are we still struggling with our speech? Yeah, James wasn't wrong. It's a restless evil. Okay? I thought maybe, even some specific questions related to specific areas of our life would be helpful. So maybe as you leave this class to think about what is one area this week I could grow in my speech, in my marriage. What's one way I could grow in my speech, in my marriage? For those of you who aren't married, what's one way I could grow in my speech with my friends, or with my parents, or parents with your kids, or whatever? What's just one way? What is one area where God has convicted you as we've read His Word and you said, I'm not only needing to put off here, I need to put on. I don't just need to stop it. I need to address my heart, realize that there is some pride, or there's some love of self, or there's some temptation to try to get something in a way that God tells me not to. I need to put that off and rather put on something that honors God. Well, I hope you'll find something particular that can help you with that, and then just for the glory of God and good of others, that we would grow as people in our speech. This is our last class for this. We will be with Greg Gifford next week. He'll be here for the counseling conference. This is my last chance to plug the counseling conference. If you're not signed up, we'd love to have you here. Friday, Saturday, you find the sheets out in the foyer. You can find out about our website on the counseling page as well. We also need some volunteers. So if you've not signed up and if you're not intending to come and you have 2 free hours on Saturday, check that out from my email and sign up. We'd love to have you come out and help as well. But Greg will be here. And then the week after, there will be a new class called Being There, which is how to help those who are hurting. And so this is for those suffering. It is. Kent did a great job walking through the concept of suffering a couple Sunday schools ago. This is to help people who are helping people who are suffering. So this is for caregivers. This is for people who have, people walking through real struggles and pain and trial. And that could be the loss of a loved one. It could be chronic illness. It could be all kinds of things. But this is a class for people who are helping them. So I hope that'll be a blessing to y'all as well. So let me pray. We'll call it now. Our Father and our God, we just are kind of overwhelmed even by this list of how many ways we can speak wrongly. And it is true that you've given much power in the tongue to even set a forest ablaze, like James describes. And so we want to be wise and mindful and repentant over our ill-spoken words. God, we don't do this well with just great consistency. And so we pray for your help. We ask for your forgiveness for our words that have been poorly spoken and deceitful and flattering and all these things that we've described. And we just pray for ongoing conviction and protection. Reminded of that phrase that the tongue is the only member imprisoned in ivory bars. And wow, what a thing to think about, that you have given us these teeth to stop the tongue from getting out. And yet it still strikes. And so God, help us to turn from those things and to meditate on you, to be full of you, to be in your word daily, to be feasting on who you are and who you've been for us in Christ. And then that out of the heart, the mouth would speak. God, that a heart full of love for you and joy in you and contentment would speak words of life and truth and hope and joy. And not, God, we're not just trying to wash the outside of the cup. We're not just trying to have better behavior or swear jar so we stop getting in trouble. We want to have hearts that have been transformed, hearts that care about you and others and that speak for your glory. And we pray that you would help us to do exactly that. We ask it all in Christ's name. Amen.